Hello, welcome back to the channel. I am going to be reviewing Random Acts of Senseless Violence by Jack Womack. And if you can see, this is the SF Masterworks edition. I am collecting these, and I did a random selection a few weeks ago. I finished this book a few weeks ago. So usually I pick my books through a random number generator from my list of books in my personal collection, and this came up, and I was actually looking forward to this one. I had read or heard some others say they're fans of this, and one I wanted to check out. First, I'll do a kind of overview of the book and what it's about. Shouldn't be too spoilery. It's actually written from the perspective of a 12-year-old girl in Manhattan. She comes from middle class, upper middle class, well-off family. Her dad is a screenwriter for Hollywood. Her mom's a professor, college professor, and she has a younger female sibling. Her and her sibling go to this all-girls private school that presumably costs a little bit of money to attend, and they have a pretty, nice, prestigious life. Don't really have to worry for much, right? So that's kind of the setup. And then this book really goes into detail and discusses societal decay. Again, all through the perspective of Lola, the 12-year-old girl, personal diary. So it's all written in, it's not like a normal narrative. It's written in diary entries, which, as a mechanism to tell a story is I wouldn't say it's unique. It's been done before, but it's not something explored very often. So I thought that was intriguing. It was an interesting take on following the book, and going with what Womack I think was trying to accomplish does it really well. And I'll get to that more in a bit. But so what ends up happening? Society is basically going to hell. This book was written in the early '90s, so maybe some of the crime and poverty levels in New York City at the time, late 80s, early 90s, was a really rough time. The LA riots were around this time as well, so I think he was trying to capture a lot of that unrest. Presidents are dying like by the week or the day, U.S. presidents. And the way you think either it'd be kind of silly sounding, which maybe it is, or oh my God, I can't believe that's happening, right? It has like big impact, but it's done well in a way that you're like, oh, well, there goes another one of them, But yeah, it follows their collapse. Her parents start losing their jobs. They have to move to a different location on a rougher side of town. They are worried about, will we be able to go to this school after this semester? So they get that worked out, but it's very gradual how this happens, and explores Lola and her family, and who can handle it, who can't. And then Lola starts meeting some other girls who are, either homeless or live in basically the projects, get assisted living. That's where she's living at. So a lot of minorities or immigrants she's hanging out with, and that becomes her new friends. And where her old friends that were more well-to-do at her school kind of start, looking down upon her because now she's poor and she can't afford nice clothes, and so. And, she lives here, so you can't go visit her at her house. It has other instances of not shown but suspected child abuse of one of her friends, which I guess it adds to the story. For me, I have a 12-year-old daughter currently as a recording, and so this was interesting to read from that perspective, given that. And at times a little weird, because it does explore some of her romantic feelings, as I guess a 12-year-old would be very worried about, even with all this happening. So that's a little awkward to read, I guess, especially given my daughter's that age. And it's not like you're actually reading some girls from history diary entries like Anne Frank or something like that. I don't even want to compare it to this. That's nonfiction, this is fiction. But anyway, when you're actually reading it and it's maybe got some things like that, it's not as big of a deal because it comes from that person. This is what this 12-year-old's romantic thoughts and feelings should be, coming from Jack Womack, which, maybe he did his research. Maybe he writes a 12-year-old girl perspective well. Maybe he doesn't. I have not been a 12-year-old girl, apparently. So, but that being said, from, what I read, it did seem well written and done well. Uh, Also, maybe a sign of the times. She seems to be more attracted to other girls, and so it kept trying to assure the reader, like through her voice, like, "Well, I think I'm liking this girl, and that's gay, but that's okay, right?" Which maybe a book written more recently wouldn't feel the need to put that, but that's okay, right? When he did it like 3, 4 times, which it kind of caught my attention. Why do you keep saying that? I'm like, oh yeah, I guess this is written in the 90s when that wasn't all okay for a lot of people, right? So that makes sense, but does date a little bit. A modern reader may find that being a little weird to read it that way. And maybe some of the focus on the relationship stuff with the 12-year-old girl on a lot of the books. Maybe it's necessary, maybe it's realistic, but those maybe weren't some of my favorite parts. So, not to spoil any further, it basically goes down how the different people in her family handle these events, how other people treat them, how society's devolving, civil unrest is rising and rising as it, and so, and here's how this family handles it. So it's about, from this printing size, a little over 220-ish, 223 pages. So a fairly quick read. I read it in 2 sittings. It is an intriguing book, so let's get to my thoughts. I liked it. It's well written. It kind of grasps you. It kind of see, hey, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next with Lola? Yeah. So that, however, I had expectations going into it, which makes it a little. I try not to have too many expectations going in, but I saw this being described as a cyberpunk book, and I love cyberpunk. It is not really cyberpunk. So, as I understand it, this is book 5 written in a series, but it's kind of like a prequel, like the what happens first kind of story. So I believe it's chronologically the first story in the series. I didn't know any of that going in. So I don't think you have to read the other ones for this one to make sense. I don't even know if Lola's character is a recurring one, or any of the people in the stories are recurring ones, or anything like that, or referenced or anything in the future, or I guess the set in the future books. But it's very science fiction light. If anything, the science fiction would be somewhat of a dystopia, the civil unrest, alternate history kind of happening, but there's nothing technologically scientific. There's nothing cyberpunkish at all. Maybe there's like a punkish attitude towards it, especially towards the end of the book. So it's very, very science fiction light, and I'd see it more as I guess supposed to be a lot of my like a character study, society study, which again science fiction does a lot of that, but it's usually in more of there's no aliens, there's no anything like that. So it's kind of a civil, it's not like there's an apocalypse happening caused by a war or thing. It's just shit's breaking down. And it doesn't really tell you why. Or if it does, maybe Lola doesn't understand because she's 12. But that's not brought up at all. So if you have those expectations, seeing it advertised as a cyberpunk science fiction book, it is not cyberpunk, and it's very light in the science fiction. That being said, it's a good book. It's a great read. I gave it 4 out of 5 on my Goodreads. It's a novelty reading in that, diary reading style. So it's something different, something a little fresh, even though obviously Womack's not the first to do it, to write a story in that fashion. A thing I think he does extraordinarily well, very, maybe a sort of a writing genius to it, is how you see Lola evolve, and through her thoughts and her words usage. So you could see, if you flip, from the beginning to the end, this naive, pampered girl going to these, and what her problems were then, compare, and she's probably just as upset to versus what her problems were towards the end of the book and what she had to deal with. And one of the other great things he does is the gutter speak or the slang she picks up. She's more prim and proper, you know, school English speaking at the beginning, as she starts hanging out with her friends, who, you know, some of them are more on the rebellious side and protesting and things like that. Uh, she starts picking up some of the more street slang where you have it, and now it's kind of Womack street slang that he created. I don't know if that language is used more in the set in the future books, the other books in the series, or not. But that transformation is done so well, and it's actually done so well that you don't really notice it as it's happening until you kind of think about comparing how she was from the beginning to the end. It's so subtle that it's done really, really well. Uh, that was one of the maybe the most impressive parts of the story. You know, on top of just being kind of gripped into the action and what's going to happen next kind of feeling. Um, but that's done really well. His prose is good. The way some of his characters act, okay, whatever. Maybe they sometimes feel like plot driven caricatures in a way, but I guess maybe you can't avoid that. I kind of don't like the story arc of the younger sister. It seemed weird, but hey, you know how would these girls handle the situations? Um, that being said, so I would recommend it for someone who wants a short, quick, gripping story. I actually have recommended it to some people who I think would like this. This is not someone that's like, hey, you know, I like Neuromancer. What should I read next? I wouldn't say this book, even though Gibson has praised Womack's work a bunch. So maybe it would, right? But not in the sense that it's going to be a similar book to Neuromancer, but more as a guy who wrote a book I like a lot also likes this book, so maybe you will too, since, okay, maybe you should for that. So that being said, I'll wrap this one up. My next review will be over The Port of Shadows by Glenn Cook. It was the latest entry in the Black Company, one he wrote well after the previous series as an in-between book 1 and 2. So I'll go into that. On my trip, I started listening to the Red Rising audiobook, which I'm actually near done with that one, and I'll expand upon more. So it'll be one of my first bigger popular books to review on this or modern popular book or book series. So that being said, I appreciate everyone's time and watching and comments and likes and all that. I try to reply to each one, and again, it helps make this more fun for me. So I'll catch you on my next video. Thank you.